On the night of October 9th, 1963, at exactly 22:39, a mountain moved. Not gradually, not over years. In approximately 45 seconds, 270 million cubic meters of rock separated from the flank of Monte Toc and fell into the Vajont Reservoir in the Dolomite Mountains of northern Italy. The displaced water rose 250 meters above the dam crest. The wave that followed traveled at over 100 kilometers per hour down the valley below. It destroyed 5 villages. It killed approximately 2,000 people. The dam did not fail. It still stands today, but the dam was never the danger. The mountain above the reservoir was the danger. The warning was written, and the reservoir was filled anyway. And by the end of this breakdown, you will understand exactly who made it, what they knew when they made it, and why the criminal trial that followed took 20 years to reach the people responsible. Before October 1963, Longarone sat at the mouth of the gorge, a market town of around 1,300 residents, where the Vajont River met the Piave. Smaller communities occupied the valley slopes: Pirago, Rivalta, Villanova, Fae. Farming communities, tradespeople, families who had lived in these mountains for generations. When SADE, the Società Adriatica di Elettricità, began construction of the Vajont Dam in 1957, the project was sold as Progress, a hydroelectric facility that would power northern Italy. The dam itself was, by any technical measure, exceptional. At 261 meters, it was the tallest thin-arch concrete dam in the world at the time of its completion. Reservoir filling began in February 1960. Within months, the slope began to respond. Survey markers placed on the Monte Toc face were recording movement of approximately 3.5 centimeters per week by November 1960. SADE engineers noted the movement. They adjusted the fill rate. They continued. In November 1960, a preliminary slide occurred, a localized movement of rock and debris into the upper reservoir. SADE ordered the water level drawn down. The movement slowed. Engineers documented the result as confirmation that reservoir level management was an effective control. Filling resumed in January 1962. The slope began to move again. Here is what the engineers now had: a live, measurable, reproducible relationship between the reservoir water level and the velocity of the Monte Toc slope. When the water rose, the slope moved faster. When the water fell, the slope moved slower. They were measuring this in real time with survey instruments and recording it in written reports. The mountain was telling them something every week. The message was consistent, and the reservoir continued to fill. By the 1st of October 1963, the Monte Toc slope was moving at 20 centimeters per day, not per week, per day. Geotechnical engineers understand acceleration curves. A slope that moves at 20 centimeters per day is not approaching stability. It is approaching a threshold, a point beyond which the forces driving movement exceed the forces resisting it, and the outcome is no longer a question of if, but when. On October 7th, the movement rate reached 80 centimeters per day. On October 8th, it exceeded 100 centimeters per day. On the morning of October 9th, workers and residents near the reservoir reported something the instruments could not measure. Deer, chamois, and other wildlife were moving rapidly away from the Monte Toc slope. The slide lasted approximately 45 seconds. 270 million cubic meters of rock entered a reservoir less than 200 meters wide at its broadest point. The water had nowhere to go except upward. The wave that overtopped the dam reached 250 meters above the crest on the downstream face, nearly the full height of the dam itself again, above the top of the structure. It traveled down the Vajont Gorge and into the Piave Valley at a speed that gave the residents of Longarone approximately 30 seconds from the moment they could have heard anything to the moment the wave arrived. Longarone was gone in under a minute. The surrounding villages, Pirago, Rivalta, Villanova, Fae, were destroyed with comparable speed. Approximately 2,000 people died. The precise number has never been confirmed because entire families were lost with no survivors to report them missing. The dam, the engineering achievement, the tallest thin-arch dam in the world, survived intact. The structure performed exactly as its designers intended. It was the most precisely irrelevant engineering success in the 20th century. And here is the number that matters more than any of the others. The movement rate recorded by the SADE engineers engineer at 2200 that night. 1 hour and 39 minutes before the wave was higher than any reading in 3 years of monitoring. He filed the report. The valley slept. The Italian criminal trial began in 1968 and concluded in 1971. 9 individuals were prosecuted: Sade executives, engineers responsible for the reservoir management program, and public officials who had oversight of the project. The trial established 3 things. The geological instability of Monte Toc had been documented before reservoir filling began. Second, the relationship between reservoir level and slope velocity had been measured, recorded, and delivered to the project engineers in real time throughout the filling period. Third, the acceleration observed in the final weeks had been observed, measured, and reported, and the valley below had not been warned. Several defendants were convicted. Most convictions were reduced or overturned on appeal. The organization failed. The individuals walked. What changed permanently was the practice of dam site geological assessment. Before Vajont, geological evaluation of reservoir slopes for instability under saturated conditions was not a standard requirement in dam engineering. After Vajont, it became mandatory in every major dam construction code in the world. Real-time slope movement monitoring, previously optional, became a minimum safety condition. These requirements exist because 2,000 people died beneath a slope that had a written geological warning 4 years before the water rose. The warning existed, the requirement did not.